One tip in helping managing anxiety is first to acknowledge how we as caregivers feel. For some, once we figure out the plan, this really can serve as a reminder of school will not be in the fall. And, we were really holding out hope that things would change, and we have to grieve this. We need to take the time to digest how we feel and work through our feelings before we try to talk to our kids. You may feel sad, you may feel anxious as a parent, you may feel relieved in the plan. All of these are okay. You may need time to go take some time for yourself and cry. Again, all okay. But what is important is that you take that time first and process how you're feeling before we can discuss the plan with our children. When we talk to our kids, it's helpful to validate their feelings. And it may be really helpful to introduce the conversation by reviewing with them that what happened last year was really difficult. It was abrupt. It was a surprise. It was hard for all of us to deal with. Express to them, this is not what we had planned. And even, our plan might not be what we were hoped for this fall. But again, focusing on the positives are a very effective way to cope. And it's helpful to remind children that unlike the spring when teachers were unprepared and we as parents were unprepared about what abruptly came, we've had all summer now to work on this. We've all been working really hard to understand how to be safe and how to get back to school in the best way possible. We've been through this before and made modifications in the plan. And it's important to talk to kids in a factual, developmentally appropriate manner. Some parents have asked me if I talk to my kids about COVID, is that going to make them more anxious? And it's important to remember that our kids are like sponges in a home. We're all together. They're feeling the emotions within the household. They're feeling our anxiety. And what they're actually imagining to be true could be worse than the reality. So it's important to check in with them and talk about what the facts are. There are some really helpful resources on the internet, so many so it can be overwhelming. And as Alan and Erin mentioned, we'll include those at the end of the talk. One I like very much is the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry parent resource during COVID. And there are many resources on how to talk to your child about COVID and the changes and their concerns in a developmentally appropriate way. With talking with their children, another tip to ease anxiety is to focus what's in our control. We have all been living with this pandemic for 6 months. We are finding a path forward. We are surviving this pandemic. There are speed bumps and U-turns along the way, but we're moving forward and we have learned how to navigate safely. We can do the 3 Ws. We can wear a mask. We can wash our hands. We can watch our distance. And these are the things that are going to keep us safe. And knowing what we can do gives children a sense of control. Another resource I really like from the American Psychological Association is also referenced, and it's for younger kids about talking to them about COVID and how to be a superhero and what is in their control. Another tip, ask kids how they feel about going back to school and try to open the dialogue. Not only what are the negatives, but what are the positives? And again, each plan is different. As Alan was saying, each kid is different. There are some children who are socially anxious or have academic challenges that have actually thrived being at home in a virtual environment, while there are other kids who school is their happy place and being socially removed from that has been really difficult. And even though going back to school in a classroom has a lot of new rules, for those kids, it might be easier than you'd expect. Having a conversations about the positives can help us identify maybe some unexpected things that are really good in whatever plan we decide. Some conversations I've heard that parents have discovered kids are excited about that little extra time to sleep in if they're doing a virtual program or on the days they're home in a hybrid program. They really like having lunch with their mom or caregiver, dad at home. When they're at home, they're psyched they get to study with their dog or cat at home in class. Or they have special time to take a walk or a brain break, whatever's set up during the day at home can be really built into a positive. And emphasizing the positive is a great way to model coping for kids. Next tip is working on the preparation, working on the transition. You are all doing this by being on the talk, by thinking about it. If you haven't received sufficient information from your school in order for you to feel real comfortable with the plan, I advise you to reach out to the teachers, try to get a little bit more information. Many teachers are doing virtual conferences to try to get to know their teachers as they can't come and visit the schools, to discuss their child and to answer questions about what school will look like. What will be the differences this year if there's virtual learning? What have they learned? Once you have that communication, you can talk about it with your child, help them prepare and transition for the fall. Talk to them about how it may look different. For instance, your desk may be spaced out. Maybe you're having lunch in your classroom and not in the cafeteria. Maybe you can give your friends a hug or a high five after you've seen them, but you can create a special greeting or handshake, or a silly way that helps them prepare for how they're going to handle this and helps them prepare that it's going to look different, but again, we're all moving forward together. Many kids are going to need additional support getting settled in. They are all rusty with their academic and social skills after being away for so long, and that is normal, that they need more time. And spending more prep work with them preparing can go a long way. Helping them to structure their time, looking at their schedules, breaking down their tasks, doing to-do lists, um, figuring out the pathway, how to communicate with their teachers is going to be really helpful for them to feel less anxious about the transition back to school. And for those that are excited generally about back to school shopping, this year is no exception. If there aren't stores that you feel safe going into, maybe prepare to do a little online shopping in the same way you would any other year. If a kid needs a new backpack, a new pencil case, something that's going to help them tangibly prepare to enter school. Other options, driving by school. Does anything look different? Are there tents set up outside? Just preparing them for that environment. Also practicing wearing a mask, starting short periods of time, different times of the day, just getting them used to that. And if for the times where kids will be either studying at home, in-home learning, one way to help transition is to look at that study space again, revisit it. Where are we going to do school? Do you need a whiteboard? Do you want to get a stuffed animal that's going to be your study buddy? How can we create that space for you um, so that we're ready and planning? Again, helping the kids feel secure in the plan is going to go a long way and helping them feel less anxious as they move forward. My next tip in coping with anxiety is making a coping ahead plan for the unknown. One of the hardest things for all of us to have dealt with during this transition is so many unknowns. And by coping ahead, I mean when everyone is calm, not in a time of panic or a time of distress, talking honestly when people are feeling calm about what's coming and being direct and honest about what negative emotions may arise and strategizing how you're going to get through it. So if there are changes, you have a plan of what you can do to feel better. And you want to set up this plan in advance. You want to send your kids the message, if anything changes, we're going to work as a team to come up with a new plan. We're going to figure this out together. We're on this team together. We're going to be safe, but we're also going to keep you learning and connecting with other people. It might look different, but we are all going to move forward with this. And while we were hoping we could get to school and stay in school, this may not happen. It may not continue. It may change. That's all okay. This is a teachable moment for parents to model how to be flexible and use coping strategies for stress when there's uncertainty and disappointment. Another tip is just as important as taking a physical temperature during this time of COVID, making sure we're physically healthy, is taking the emotional temperature of yourself, your household, your children. And a way to do this, to check in with them, is really to try to open up communication. Hardest thing to do or a very hard thing to do as a parent is not to assume how they're feeling and not wanting to jump in and fix it. um, we can't fix this right now. We need to have a lower expectation that we can't fix this. What we can do is work through how we're feeling, and we're going to move forward and make progress together. So check in and ask them how they're feeling and let them know that we will be checking in again about this. This is going to be a rolling conversation. So it really sets the stage that they have a safe place to talk about it. Moreover, that you're open to hearing about how they're feeling and you can handle them hearing that they're not okay with it. We don't want our kids to worry about holding things in because they're worried they don't want to upset their parents more. Older kids undoubtedly will have an easier time verbalizing their feelings. For younger kids, it could be more difficult. It may be helpful to do a feelings chart, identify faces. There are many resources online on how to help younger kids express how they're feeling. And be attuned and take the temperature of the emotional environment in your house. Obviously, love and connection always take precedence over figuring out that math problem or um, wearing out your last nerve when your child is tantruming and regressed a little bit, which is understandable in this time of stress. If they can feel that love and connection and feel secure in it, that's going to go very far. Help them be more settled, help them learn better over time, help them be motivated to stay on track. So we have established a new normal. We have gotten through this summer and that normal is changing a bit as schedules change with the fall, with the school. And I encourage you really to look at what your new normal looks like. We all benefit from structure. Kids are looking for routines. They need consistent bedtimes and wake times. This helps reduce their anxiety. In times of uncertainty, we all need to know that things are familiar and predictable. We cling to these things. So I encourage you to build in time to look for those activities that can be your new normal. And again, we are all wearing many hats. We may not have a lot of time to do this. It could be as simple as scheduling 10 minutes of child time with mommy on a specific day. It could be a special bike ride. It could be we all have time schedule and permitting to have dinners together as a family. But finding this new normal and trying to stick with a routine is very helpful for kids to feel settled as they're transitioning back to school. And not to be minimized as the last bullet on this slide is caregiver self-care. We all know what keeps us healthy physically and emotionally, but it bears to keep in mind as we're all so busy that we need to keep regular routines to keep us healthy. That's sleep, nutrition, hydration, and physical activity. This is going to keep us physically well. This is going to keep us emotionally well and help us as parents model effective stress management to our kids. During this time, we've all needed to be exceptionally compassionate for our community, for our teachers, for our kids. We need to be compassionate for ourselves. Many parents had to pivot without warning to not only be working full-time, but to be a full-time caretaker, a full-time teacher, a full-time infectious disease researcher in an effort to educate ourselves how to protect the well-being of our families. Many of us have not had a break from wearing many hats. And during this prolonged trauma, we haven't had a break from the worry about this. And what we know about disasters are that anxiety in children is impacted by how their parents handle stress. Parents' ability to handle stress is one of the most significant factors in how children cope and adjust. And I don't say this to make people feel that they aren't allowed to feel stress or show stress. That is healthy. It's to really remind us that we need to take time to self-care so we can model working through that stress in a healthy way for our kids. One thing that can be helpful is to stay informed but avoid prolonged exposure to the media. Take COVID breaks. Try to unplug. Take time for yourself, whether that be taking 5 minutes to stretch, doing a couple of deep breathing exercises, hiding in the bathroom. Believe me, it is okay. And it is okay to teach your kids that we all need a break to help us cope. Caregivers also should really try to manage their social connections to maintain their emotional health. Going back to school, take a look at who your team is. Who are your family members, your friends, um, teachers, people on the PTO, people you may have a group text chat with. Who are you going to lean into when you need some adult time to talk about these stressors away from your kids, and use them when you can. So on my next slide, I'd like to talk about, when is there a cause for concern? So even without the pandemic, back to school can be a stressful time for many kids and parents. Kids generally can feel nervous, they can feel shy, getting to know their new classroom, new teachers, new schoolwork, and back to school jitters are normal. And it is normal that they will be prolonged this year since we've all been away from school for such a long time. Having fear and worry for kids is a natural reaction to a stressful or new situation. It's only when it grows out of proportion to a threat that it can become problematic. So things to keep attuned to and look out for are that if your child's worry is excessive and it's causing so much distress that it's disrupting their life, meaning they're having difficulty getting along with friends and family members that they generally would get along with and like to spend time with, they are having difficulty um, engaging in their usual activity. They're avoiding their fun activities. They're having more outbursts. They're crying more. They're more irritable. If you see unhealthy sleep or appetite changes, really struggling with concentration, these could be all signs that your child may be struggling with stress and anxiety. And it may be an indication that they should be evaluated. For kids that have struggled with anxiety before the pandemic, these symptoms may be certainly heightened. And if they had a previous therapist or used to check in with a school counselor, maybe reconnect with them to keep an eye on things. Or if your child is on medication for anxiety, be sure to follow up and talk about symptoms as they present to make sure that their treatment team plan is up to date. And for caregivers, please rely on your team if you're having any questions how your child is handling stress. Reach out to teachers, school counselors, school nurse, and your pediatrician if you think your child needs to be evaluated and you want to talk about further steps. And my next slide is something that a theme I've been discussing this morning in handling stress, that we all are finding a path forward in this. COVID-19 is a teachable moment for helping kids develop healthy coping skills. Caregivers have the opportunity to model managing difficult feelings. A way to do this is ask your children to describe how they're feeling. Older kids can, rate their feelings. You can refer to your cope ahead plan and pick an activity to do and then revisit that feeling later. And kids are going to learn that they can cope and control their feelings. And this emotional regulation is a lifelong skill that you can model for your kids. Kids are resilient. Kids are developing more resiliency. They're learning how to cope with adversity. They are learning how to adapt from watching how their parents are navigating this. They're learning flexibility, and they're strengthening their ability to be independent learners. Another positive thing that families have told me, that this increased time together as a family has improved their communication, or it's served as an opportunity to learn how to communicate better. It has strengthened relationships and has really provided an opportunity to be more connected with our loved ones. And when our kids feel that connection, this will go very far in helping them feel secure, helping them manage their emotions, in turn, helping them stay on track and being more motivated to transition back to school. And again, we have many resources that can be helpful tools in more discussion with your family about how to navigate